Hello, and welcome to the Author Roundup, a special segment of the Book Connection Show where we meet up and coming indie authors and talk to them about their recently released books. Hello, my name is Jenny, and this is Author Roundup. For this episode, we have two special guests, co authors who just had their first book published a few months ago. They are lifelong friends who grew up together in Alabama. Writing has always been a passion they shared throughout the years, and becoming authors has always been their dream. This, along with their love for the horror genre, gave us the recently published book, Venom. Please welcome Whitney Westrope and Kayla Koepp. Hi, Whitney and Kayla. Welcome to Author Roundup. How
Hello.
are
Hello.
you?
Good. How are you?
We're very excited to talk to you about your book and get to know you better. So, may I ask you to share a little bit more about yourself, each of you?
Of course. Well, I'm Kayla. Whitney's best friend ever. We grew up together. I also was in the military for 8 years of my life, where I met my husband, and we have four beautiful children together. And since I got out of the military, other than writing this book, I currently work for the post office, and I'm also a full-time student here at one of the local community colleges.
I'm Whitney. Other than writing this book, I am a cleaning contractor for a realtor company in Alabama called Weicker. I am a full-time mother of a daughter. And other than that, I spend all my time working on this book series.
So, both of you, it seems, are very busy, but you still found time to write the book. And I understand it was just published last April, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Mm-hmm. Would you tell us more about it?
So the book is about a venomous clan that resides in the Blue Ridge mountain area of the Appalachian Mountains. And unfortunately, due to the carelessness of a couple of those clan members, they get discovered. And so the FBI gets involved, the military gets involved, scientists get involved, and it turns into a war of the species, basically fight for survival.
Okay, so there is some touch of, something mysterious in the book, like in the plot, right? Because I understand would that be about another creature, or tell us more about it?
So these creatures we actually created, and
Mhm.
we do not name them because creatures don't give themselves names, and it is actually written in their point of view.
Hmm.
And
Okay.
then on our cover art, you'll see a symbol.
Mhm.
It looks a little bit like a pointed hourglass with crescent moons, and there's a cross in it as well. That is actually an original artwork design that we created. And that is the predatory marking that is imprinted on the back of their necks upon birth.
Mhm.
And Whitney and I actually went and got those tattooed on the back of our necks shortly after we got the rights to that artwork published.
Wow. So, who made that design for you? The design for the tattoo, or for the marking
did.
on the creatures? Both of you.
Mhm.
You designed it. I see. So, tell us what inspired you to write this book.
So originally, when I was about 7 years old, before I met Kayla, which I only met her a few years later, but when I was about 7 years old, I knew I wanted to be a science fiction horror author.
Mhm.
And so, in doing that, started writing little child stories that I thought were spooky, but they weren't. But I was inspired by the Alien trilogy. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah.
So that's kind of what got me going. So when I met Kayla, we instantly clicked. And one day I asked her, "Do you want to write a book?" And we kind of stuck to that sci-fi horror genre. So
We just learned not to plagiarize as we got older.
So, both of you really have great imagination. Like, you think about these creatures and, other stuff that can happen beyond the human world. Have you always been like that?
I know I have. I grew up loving the supernatural. I loved the vampire, the ghost stories, the werewolves. I still do to this day. And like my favorite time period is Victorian Gothic era, anyways. And I always remembered my mom was like, oh, it's just a phase, and it's not a phase.
Okay, so you said that when you were still kids, you already agreed to write a book. So
Yes.
as early as that time, do you already have Venom in mind? Like, do you already have the story for Venom in mind?
Kind of, sort of. So we always knew, like, we started off with these creatures that, when you're children, you don't understand plagiarism. So we
Right.
created this creature that
Mhm.
very closely related xenomorphs. It just, they could just, transform into them. But as we got older, we started going on a more creative path, and we sat down and just kind of mapped out everything about these creatures that all the attributes that we wanted them to have. And until it was a very original work.
Mhm.
And then we actually still have some of the notes and the family trees from the old characters.
It's
Um,
embarrassing, actually.
we definitely grew. You can see where we matured and where we needed to mature. But and then like cuz back then it was called Insurrection, and we actually typed out the book, and kind of an embarrassing story. It was 750 pages long
Garbage.
of garbage. and and it was saved on a floppy disk, but the floppy disk crashed, and then we stopped writing for 11 years because of that, because we cried and we
Oh,
were like, oh.
that's too bad. So just because you lost the copy, so you stopped writing, when did you regain the interest to continue this dream?
October 20th, 2022. That is when we started writing again.
Okay. And so from that 2022, you said, and then now it's 2024, you just recently had it published. How long did it take you to complete your book?
It took us a year to outline, rough draft, hard edit,
Mhm.
and I'll say publish.
Yeah, and then it took roughly another year to get it published because we had to Archway was not the only one that was interested in it, and we had to sit there and weigh the pros and cons of which company, who would give us the most benefits, who would elevate us to where we want it to go. And eventually we ended up settling on Archway, and then from there it was a step-by-step process of getting it edited and then formatting and making our actual dream come true.
I see. So it's interesting to know that there are two authors of this book, and it's a fiction book. Tell us how it works. Like, how do you brainstorm, or how do you come up with these ideas, and how do you decide which ones to keep?
So each of us have our specialties with writing. So Kayla, she has a specific character that she sticks with the point of view, because we switch point of views with, I want to say, three main characters. We'll switch point of views periodically throughout the book, where Kayla specializes in this one specific character because he's got that military black ops kind of mindset that she's more familiar with due to her having been in the military, where a few of the characters that I work with, when it comes to emotional outbursts and like rage fits and stuff, psychological issues, I specialize in those.
There's even certain scenes as well where instead of having like angry outbursts, you have the romantic part of it. And that's where I come back again because that's not really Whitney's forte. Hers is more like gore and horror and combat, and mine is strategic. And there's some scenes where if it's not strategic or highly depressing, it's military tactics, like
Mhm. I
or
see.
romantic. About that. That's those are my fortes.
Yeah, it's nice that you complement each other, and like you have your fortes or you have your specialties and all that. I think that's why it works. And probably also because you have been friends for the longest time. So you guys know how to adjust to one another, right?
Well, when we started this, because before we even started writing, we kept bringing it back up because we did think of all this as a child. When we first started to sit down and seriously write it again back in 2022, we made a deal. Work is work, and our friendship does not cross into work. So there will be days where creative writing differences were really high, and we would get into very heated discussions.
Oh yeah.
And then we would we would angrily hang up the phone and walk away from the manuscript, but then 5 minutes later we would call each other again about something completely unrelated, and we left it like that because work was work and friendship was completely
Separate.
yes.
Yeah. That's quite easy to, when you're saying it, I mean, I would think that it's easy, but I know it's not. Like when you're there, right? So tell us about the good parts or the enjoyable parts that you've had while you were writing the book. What parts did you
Well,
enjoy?
Well, personally, for me, I enjoyed the, intense, fast-paced, adrenaline rush scenes, all the combat scenes, the psychological thriller scenes, and just the really disgusting, grotesque scenes, really.
She's made me gag. And me personally, it's kind of all the stuff that happens behind the scenes when writing, because she and I would be in the middle of writing and editing a scene together. And I would start because we work on Google Documents, we can see each other type in real time.
Oh,
And I'll
okay.
start intentionally trying to screw her up, or I'll be like, we use that word 5 times, and she's like, then you go fix it after this. And so I am I guess the class clown out of the two of us when it came to writing it.
I'm mean.
You're mean.
I'm really mean.
But for me, what I loved was when we were writing, we did have some idea of where we wanted this to go, what we wanted the characters to go through. But there was even one character, and I'm not going to give away their name or their gender, but there was one character who was supposed to be just a background character, and they became so essential that they went from background character to okay, they're somewhat essential, to okay, they're really essential, to okay, they might as well just be a main character at this point, because we ended up utilizing them so much. And we make jokes about it all the time, can you believe that they were supposed to be insignificant? And so just seeing how the character development can even surprise us, I enjoy that too.
Yeah. So I know it can be, it would have surprises along the way, like decisions that were not really something that you agreed on at the beginning of writing this. So how did you deal with those moments? Like when, just like what you shared, there was this character who started to be there in the story a little bit more than they were supposed to be. How did you deal with that? Like, were there instances when there was some point wherein you did not agree with it? You would have to agree with it, right? Before you would keep it in the book. I mean, as co-authors, I would assume that's how you would do it. So how did you deal with those moments?
So it wasn't really anything that we necessarily agreed on. It was one of those where he just kind of became something so much more than a pawn in this book, and we loved it so much that we started including him in more and more scenes, and then eventually gave him a point of view.
You just gave his
I
gender.
see.
It doesn't matter.
So your readers who are watching or listening to this interview now would have to try to guess who that is, right? Because we're not
They've got
giving
a
away
few
any
to
name.
few to pick from.
They'll probably figure it out once they finish reading the book. Okay, so you talk about the fun part. How about the challenging part, or the parts that are not so easy to go through? Tell us or take us through those times.
So there's an inside joke between us called the curse of chapter 10, because writing chapter 10 and editing chapter 10 both times burned us out so much. We had to walk away from it, and we had to sit here because it wasn't just the book, it was also real life events, because with both of us being mothers and both of us, like, she has her business, I am working and I am going to school. I'm trying to still do things on my own outside of this book. It just became very difficult around the same time for both of us, and we had to walk away and pause. And we came back and we were like, hey, if we do not get back in the flow of this, we're not going to get back into it at all. So one of the biggest challenges was basically trying to support each other in the book while also trying to juggle real life outside of the book.
Yeah, of course. We all have our lives to lead, and then we have this project or this book. And sometimes it can be difficult to, decide which one to prioritize. Plus the fact that there's two of you working on the book, right? So that must have added to the challenges. How about you, Whitney? What challenges did you experience while writing the book?
So I agree with Kayla about chapter 10. That was extremely stressful. And I'm not going to knock on co-authoring a book with her because we are a wonderful team. But I think some of the most stressful things for me was the creative differences, most definitely. So we would argue about a scene or, whatnot. And I tend to get pretty irate. It's a character flaw of mine. And I don't have much patience where I should. And so there were constant, I guess you could say, turmoils throughout the book because I just, I am the way I am. But other than that, like, there wasn't really many hiccups.
It also doesn't help that whenever she gets upset, I just go quiet and shut down. But I think that's one of the reasons why when it got to that point, we both just kind of like dropped and walked away. And after we had a chance to calm down and come back and talk about it, a lot of the times we were both right and we just had to find a compromise, honestly.
Right. I see. So your book has been out for a few months now, and you have started to receive a lot of reviews in Amazon and the other reseller sites. Can you share with us the feedback or review that you feel is the nicest or had the most impact on you?
She left this really amazing, really detailed review about our book.
In this review, she spoke about how inclusive our book was and how we also included the LGBTQ community, how we included all different races, religion backgrounds, basically everybody was included. She spoke about the combat scenes, like the battle scenes and how intense they were, and talking about her having adrenaline and the complexity of the characters and the storyline.
She also talked about how she loved that we have a strong female lead and how even though there is a general plot of the book, we had subplots that did not fall through. They did not become plot holes, and questions that were unanswered were intentionally unanswered because they'll carry on into the next book. And she is actually bothering us to hurry up and finish the next book.
She wants to read the next book. Okay. So I want to touch on what she mentioned, like you having a female lead and the story being inclusive and all that. Was that a conscious effort from the two of you to do that?
Not necessarily. We just kind of, we create characters and, appearances and backgrounds, and then we just kind of plop them in there. But she enjoyed it.
Yeah.
So
we try not to focus on race. There's been a few people where we're like, oh, they have like sun-kissed skin or that person is pale, but we didn't really want that to become a main focus of anything because this is something you should enjoy, and whatever you think the character looks like in your head, then that's how they should look like in your head.
Reader's imagination.
Yeah. And
Correct.
then as far as the LGBTQ community, that really wasn't a conscious effort either. Because again, everything should be inclusive. I know that I'm part of that community myself, and even though that there are characters in there that are definitely part of that community, they're not necessarily like, oh, it you have to know that this person is, it's always going to be in your face. It's like, no, that's just how they live. That's it's life. And then again, this book does take place in present time. So
Yeah, I mean, it's good because someone appreciated that, right?
yes.
Based on the review that you got. Okay, so what advice would you give to a writer writing his or her first book?
Well, what I would tell somebody writing their first book is try not to overthink it. You know, when you start typing, just let it flow out of you. Even if it doesn't make sense, you can always go back and hard edit it. I suggest that they go copyright their own work. If they
Mhm.
choose to publish it, they need to copyright it themselves before putting it out there
Right.
because you just never know. But they you're never gonna feel like your work is complete. No matter how many times you edit it, there's always something that you can go back and change. So it's up to you to decide when you're done. Like you have to cut yourself off and go no more edits and you know,
What I would say is that if you honestly like, if something is moving you to the point to where you're like, I feel like I should write about this, the biggest mistake you can make is to not follow your gut. Honestly, because like she said, at the end of the day, you're not going to feel like it's ever finished. But if you truly want to do this, go for it. Because the worst thing you could do is not. And then you're stuck living in the, well, what if I did? And the what if this and what if that? If you put in the effort, I guarantee you there's at least one other person in the world who is going to take the effort to read it. And for us, it's not even like trying to become bestsellers. Would that be great? Yeah, but at the end of the day, we want our work to be out there. And if you want your work to be out there, then you have to put in that work. You have to do it because if you don't, you're just going to be sitting there living in the what if, and that's not a good place you want to be.
Mhm. I see. So, how about for those writers who cannot keep the momentum? So, you may have touched on this earlier when you said that there are good days, bad days when the creative juices are flowing and all that. So, how do you go beyond that? Like when you are in a bad day wherein you can't really think of anything or you can't just, move on with what you're
you
doing.
you have to make yourself write. Even when you don't feel like writing, Stephen King even said it himself that you have to make yourself write. You start up, you just take it one step at a time. You write a sentence and then you write another sentence, and eventually something's going to click in your brain and you're going to be typing all over. But it does involve a lot of caffeine. I highly recommend all kinds of caffeine and late nights to get everything done. There's plenty of times that we haven't felt like writing. It's like pulling teeth, but you know what? Like we have to sit down and pull those teeth and write anyways.
There's
Right.
also days where I know it got so bad for me, like I honestly couldn't. And if you find yourself in one of those situations where just thinking about it is going to make you dread going to it and stuff like that, it is okay to take a break. It is okay to hit pause and take care of yourself because you don't need to break yourself in trying to write. If all you can do is like type a 3-word sentence, then instead of going, oh, I can't believe that's all I did, it's like, hey, I did something today, and just take a small win and move on because Whitney is right. Eventually, something is going to click. And yes, there will be days that are going to be worse than others. And it doesn't matter at least in my belief, it doesn't matter how successful of a writer you are, you're going to have bad days. Everybody does. Everyone's human.
I mean, you just have to accept that there will be days when you're very productive and days like when you really can't think of anything to write. So, how about the dynamics of working with a co-author? I'm sure a lot of people will be interested in that. Like, how do you make it work? It's enough already that it's a lot of hard work just to come up with a book, and now you have someone to write the book with. So how did it work for you guys?
So how it worked is that we actually come up with an outline. I ended up buying Bluetooth earbuds so that way whenever I am at work, I can actively talk to her because you're not supposed to drive and be on the phone and driving while delivering mail and on the phone. I need my hands free. I really do. So I have her in my ear and she and we talk. I'm able to focus on both my jobs at the same time. And while I am in school and unable to write, she at least has the notes that she typed up while we were talking on the phone about the outline and this is what should happen and this is what should do. So she's able to go ahead and write that. And then whenever I get out of school, I can read through what she wrote, I could edit it. And then there are days where we're both able to sit down and we'll be on the phone together and we're typing up a scene together. And this is why I love Google Docs, because again, we can see each other type in real time and we both go back and forth. And so the thing is that we have to have that open line of communication, because if we don't have it, then nothing gets done and then it's just sitting there.
And something else that we do, which ties into what she's saying, really, one of us will write a scene and then the other one goes back over it and then adds stuff in it, takes stuff out. We just kind of take turns doing that throughout the book. And it depends if it's in our forte, like if it's our specialty, she'll write, say
Parentheses, put something gory here.
so she'll write, romantic scenes and I get to go back over it and add and take away stuff without altering the scene, where I will write gory, combat, disgusting scenes and she'll do the same. She'll go back. And so anyway,
there's been a few romantic scenes where she didn't really want to write it, and you can tell when she wrote the scene she didn't want to write it, and then I would be like, yeah, I'm gonna fix it.
So we kind of decided somewhere in the process of writing Venom, we kind of decided, okay, look, this is your forte, this is mine, stick to our specialty.
So it's like having an editor with you all the time. So when you write something, the other one is there to review it and give comments or critique it, just so you can improve it. I think that's cool. It's very nice. So okay, so the book is out already, and I'm sure from the feedback that you're getting, they're waiting for the next book. So I want to ask you about your plans, about the book, your personal and professional book goals this year.
So professionally, we're actually right now talking to a few local vendors, because even though our book is in a lot of online retail sites, we would like to see Venom actually be on physical shelves. So right now we are talking to multiple local realtors, trying to see if one, we can get it on their shelves, and two, if we can host a book signing, because a lot of our fans are actually still local to us, which is kind of cool. Personally, I think we just really want to finish the rough draft of Rival, because we started writing it and then we had to chuck it out and do it all over again. And now we're almost to the point to where we can start writing it again.
Yes. Okay. So this is the second book, and I heard there's already a title, you said, Rival?
Yes.
Do we already know how many books will be in the series? Or four, I see. Okay, so you have a lot to do until the end of this year, so good luck on that. What would be your final message to your readers, to the viewers and listeners who are with us today?
Honestly, I would say if you really love horror, if you are completely okay with, if you're one of those people who's completely okay with handling a lot of trigger warnings, because Venom is not for the faint of heart. There is death, there's gore. The biggest trigger I would have to say is child death. There is no SA. That is a line we're not going to cross. But still, like, it is very triggering to a lot of people. If you are one of those who honestly can handle that, you love horror, you love the psychological stuff, we invite you to please just check out our book. It's on Amazon, it's on Barnes and Noble, it's even on the Walmart website and Books A Million. We have our website, which is the Appalachian Mountain Series.com. And that is actually our Facebook page, the Appalachian Mountain Series. We just got done hosting a giveaway. We're planning on hosting more giveaways in the future. And we really want to connect with our readers as well. So if they're horror lovers and they actually want to hear any more behind the scenes stuff, they do not have to be afraid to contact us.
I guess all I really have to say, Kayla pretty much summed it up. Go buy our book. We hope you enjoy it. This has been a lifelong dream of ours, and we're just getting started.
Okay, so earlier you said, I just want to make sure that I ask this question because you said that Venom is not for the faint of heart. So,
Yes.
what is Venom's message? What would you like to say through your book?
Well, oh man. Okay. So when I think of Venom, I think of its concept where you have two separate species that feel threatened by the other because of misunderstandings, but they both feel they have the right to exist. And I feel like that is similar to how things work in the real world.
Right.
Not necessarily with species, but with like politics or religion or it's like the same concept. So
Because I know a lot of people, they sit there and they're like, oh, what's the difference between good and bad, right and wrong? Well, life really isn't so black and white. There's a lot of blurring of the lines, and Venom will actually point that out. And then, with as gory as it is, it's not just to get a stir out of people. The abuse that you see some of these characters go through, you see how it shapes them. You see how they either learn and grow from it, or you see how they mold into that themselves. And it is a process. It actually is very much showing you flaws of everyday life, not just, like she said, not just with humans, there is no one specific thing. It's because you can't control everything. You can't control everything as much as people would love to. Life is life, really.
and then we also show throughout the series, and it starts in the first book, how humans, whenever they go into a panic, it's going to be their downfall. It starts in the first book, how it's slowly going to start taking down the government because people don't know how to react or what to think when there's something they don't understand. So leads to hysteria and the downfall of the government, downfall of the USA.
And then you get to see how one of the reasons why it starts to lead to the downfall isn't because in a perfect world, there's systems in place for a specific reason. And in a perfect world, it would always work. But then you have certain people who are purely motivated by greed and by prejudice. And it's those people that throw those perfect systems out of balance. It is up to you to decide really who you, I guess, want to side with. There in this book, there's honestly no sides. Like I said, there's good and bad. They all coincide together. Even though it is written in the point of view of our creatures, like Whitney pointed out, our creatures feel like they have the right to survive, but humans also feel like they have the right to survive and to protect themselves. And so that's the thing, is like at the end of the day, everyone's primal instinct comes out. So I guess it depends on who you emotionally attach yourself with more.
Okay. I'm sure those things that you said stirred up a lot of interest in everyone watching and listening to this interview. So thank you so much, Whitney and Kayla, for this interview. It's a very good conversation, and I'm sure both of you are very excited to share Venom to the world. So make sure, to all of our viewers and listeners, please make sure you get a copy of Whitney Westrope and Kayla Koepp's book Venom. It's available in paperback, hardback, and ebook, and you can order it in Archway Publishing's online bookstore, as well as Amazon.com and BarnesandNoble.com. And then soon, it's also going to be available in the local bookstores in their area. Okay, so again, thank you. You are an inspiration to everyone who would want to write books, and you are living proof that yes, co-authorship works. I mean, it can work as long as you understand each other, you adjust one another, and you make time to get in touch, connect, and all that. So thank you so much to our viewers and listeners. See you again on the next episode of Author Roundup.